I'm going to be talking about Kotlin, a relatively new programming language, and why you should all use it instead of Java. So just a little bit of background on Kotlin before we delve into some of the syntax and its features. Kotlin is a statically typed programming language, which basically means that all the types of variables are known at compile time. Kotlin runs on the Java virtual machine and coexists with Java seamlessly. JetBrains, the same company that created IntelliJ, CLion, and PyCharm, created Kotlin in 2011. And one interesting fact about Kotlin is that it can be compiled into JavaScript source code. So Kotlin is 100% interpretable with Java, which essentially means that you can go from Java to Kotlin and Kotlin to Java without any errors or anything. In fact, a lot of IDEs provide tools and converters to convert from Kotlin to Java and Java to Kotlin. Kotlin used to be the most beloved programming language amongst programmers and now sits at second place, just behind Rust. And most of us learned our foundations of programming in Java. And Kotlin's syntax is very similar to Java, so it'll be really easy to pick up. So now we'll get into some of the syntax and some of the actual features of the language to show why it's very useful. So Kotlin's not actually loosely typed, but it has some of the features of a loosely typed language. As I mentioned before, it's statically typed. So Kotlin gives you the option to either declare the types of variables explicitly or implicitly. So for A and B here, the first two declarations, you can see that they're implicit. The compiler will infer that A is a string and B is an integer at compile time. Whereas C and D are explicitly declared, the types of the variables. So C is a double and D is a set. So whatever you feel like is best and most readable, you can go ahead and use throughout the code, which is super cool. Another cool feature about Kotlin is the equals. Many of us that program in Java, when we create classes and objects, understand the pain in the butt of overriding equals every single time. And most of the time, this method is really trivial and it's just comparing member variables. So Kotlin does this for you. So it provides you with two different types of equalities. There's structural equality and referential equality. So structural equality will just compare the members variables of two objects, and if they're the same, it'll be equal. So that first A equals B is true, because the price is the same for both A and B. Then there's referential equality, which actually compares the address of the object. So it would have to be the same exact object. So A and B would not be equal here. Another cool feature of Kotlin is smart casts. So for those of you that know about instance of, in Java, when you don't know the type of an object and you want some object-specific method, use instance of to verify that it is that type of object so that you can use that method. Kotlin does that for you, and it'll follow your logic and autocast stuff for you. So looking at this code, if you execute that object.add, you know that that must be a list. So Kotlin will actually do that for you and autocast it to a list of strings, so you can go ahead and add that. String.format is also native to Kotlin. Printing in Java isn't that bad, but this is just a little more clean. Use the $sign to denote the value of a variable. So here, this would print out sum of 4 and 1 is, or sum of 3 and 1 is 4. And if you surround it by braces, you can actually do calculations as well. One of my favorite features of Kotlin is default arguments. In Java, when you make objects and you want to have different sets of parameters, you have to override that method X amount of times. And that causes a lot of repetition and a lot of unnecessary code. So Kotlin takes care of this for you. In Google Guava introduced builders, which are kind of similar. But here with function foo, you provide the default values of variables so that if the user does not provide them, they're automatically set to that. So if I were to call foo with just name and height, the weight would default to 150. So that saves you a lot of code and makes it a lot more readable. Lastly, classes in Kotlin are a lot better. And this is one of the main goals of the programming language, is to make classes just easier and more used throughout code. So this is a Kotlin class. As you can see, it's very similar to Java, but this is actually the wrong way to do a class in Kotlin. The right way to do a class in Kotlin is like this, just one line of code. All of that in one line of code. It auto-generates your getters for you, your constructors, and you just pass the member variables as right after the class name. So again, really short, and anytime you want to join a couple objects together in your code, you can just create a class in one line and use that. Makes the code a lot more readable and a lot easier. So here's my references, and those are just a few of the features that Kotlin provides. There's a lot more to go down, but it's a really cool language that's emerging, and I think everybody should try it out. Thank you.
How did you discover Kotlin?
So I interned at Amazon last summer, and I worked on Android development, and the team I was working on was in the process of migrating a lot of our code base to Kotlin. So that was pretty cool. And Google actually accepted Kotlin, and a lot of Android development is being done in it now. So.